tensions continue to mount between Russia and NATO over Ukraine. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov gave an exclusive interview to RT, saying the underlying reason for the tensions is that NATO and the West in general can no longer be trusted.
They've
lied to us on a regular basis, from oral pledges to even political obligations enshrined in the Russia-NATO Political Act. So this time, as President Putin said, we want to have legally binding guarantees. At the same time, we understand that the West can violate such guarantees as well if it wants to.
Well, the central issue surrounds NATO's continued expansion eastward, right up to the borders of Russia. Vladimir Putin has repeatedly stated that Ukraine joining NATO is a red line. Mr. Lavrov addressed NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, who said recently that NATO will not make any agreements which limit the alliance's ability to expand.
So when Jens Stoltenberg made this highbrow and arrogant statement that no one can breach the principle, the Washington Treaty, in accordance with which doors are open for any candidate wishing to accede to NATO, we can say that we are not party to this organization. We have not signed this treaty, but we have signed a broader pan-regional Euro-Atlantic document that includes the principle of indivisible security. And if Jens Stoltenberg believes that NATO members can ignore this principle that is enshrined in the documents adopted at the highest level, then perhaps it is indeed time for him to get a different job, because he does not perform his functions very well.
All right, here to discuss all of this and more is former Pentagon official Mike Malouf and former UK MP George Galloway. Now, Mike, I'll go to you first. The Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu says he believes that multiple containers that have arrived in Donbass contain, quote, unidentified chemical weapons, or components rather, and that there are more than 100 U.S. mercenaries there planning a false flag chemical attack. But he did so without providing any evidence. The U.S. State Department has vociferously denied all of this. Can we take Shoigu at his word?
Well, can we take the State Department at their word? No, I think he's got intel on the ground, so I think that there's a possibility that if there's smoke, there's fire. So, but he should have provided some more tangible evidence, I think. Yeah. But what his claim is not unheard of. You have private military contractors going in to instigate. My concern is not just chemicals of some kind like we saw in Syria that prompted us to go and fire missiles into Syria, but previously, but snipers. To provocate and create the climate of hostility and tension that one spark will ignite everything.
Right, because then it's not a lie if they say Ukrainian military have not fired into Russia.
Yeah, who knows who it'll be? Right. It could be a private military contractor set up to do that. Look, it was outsiders who caused the coup in Ukraine in the first place back in 2014. They came in from the West, from the United States. Victoria Nuland, Joe Biden.
There's that name.
There they go again. She did a little more than serve cookies.
Yes, I would say so. George, I mean, would this be out of the realm of possibility that U.S. mercenaries are on the ground in Donbass poking the beehive? Can you think of some historical events that might support this idea?
Well, I'm not sure they could make that souffle rise twice. They did it in Syria, as Mike just alluded, with an increasing lack of credibility. It's not yet busted flush, the idea that the Syrian regime used chemical weapons, which justified what we in the West did, but it's getting there. There's an informed public and professional class that now disbelieves that initial story. But if you want a historical, the mother of all historical analogies is the chemical and biological weapon lie that led George Bush and Tony Blair to invade and occupy Iraq. Inadvertently, one hopes, creating ISIS and cascading extremism all over the world, and of course costing 1 million people in Iraq their lives. That was a chemical weapon provocation. Non-existent weapons were cited as the reason why NATO countries and others should invade and occupy Iraq, with catastrophic results. So we have to be on our guard, but I'm not sure how credible people would find it that Russia was somehow involved in a chemical weapons attack. It's as I say, the souffle's already risen. I'm not sure you could make it rise again. But another kind of provocation, as Mike says, may be.
Mike, the DOD also took to the press denying these allegations, but when John Kirby was asked if SecDef Lloyd Austin has spoken with his Russian counterpart Shoigu, the short answer was no, and that there's nothing on the calendar to do so. Shouldn't these guys be talking ASAP?
Well, they do have a hotline, and they should be talking. They should be trying to calm the tension that exists. But when you have the United States involved in instigating, in provocating, having this narrative with NATO to push up to the Federation border with NATO, it leaves nothing to the imagination. Again, I think it's an overreaction from the abysmal evacuation that we had out of Afghanistan. So the U.S. now will overreact. And Lloyd Austin was
distraction.
Well, to show that we're still the leader of the free world, if you will. But you had Lloyd Austin still doing that with Georgia initially. Then he went to Ukraine. Why did he instigate something like that after Afghanistan pullout? Because they have to have turmoil, they have to have tension, they have to have a boogeyman. Yeah. And you not only what's a condition that's evolving, but by early next year, in my humble opinion, is you're going to have the Black Sea and Ukraine confrontation combined with Taiwan, and then Iran, because now you have the U.S. saying that Iran's nuke program is a, quote, grave threat.
Yeah, that usually implies imminent.
Are we talking a three-front war? We can't even fight one.
Yeah, good point. George, last night, Vladimir Putin said he would, quote, take proportionate military technical countermeasures and respond firmly to unfriendly steps. That's in reference to any further NATO expansion eastward. Is the West playing a dangerous game of chicken with the Russian leader here?
Very much so, and I'm with Mike again on this. In 2022, we may very well have war. And the worst case scenario for the United States is that we have war on three fronts: the Chinese front, the Russian front, and in the Persian Gulf. That's a distinct possibility. The one thing and I said this on your show, first of all, I may have been the first person to say it, that when Putin talked about red lines, he really meant it. If there is any further provocation on the border between Ukraine and Russia, there will be war. And the United States will either look extremely foolish, having marched Ukraine up to the top of the hill, if it then tries to march down again without sending armed forces to defend Ukraine, or at least a part of Ukraine will be lost. So if you want to avoid war, better tell your leaders to take a step back, and right now, because this is getting extremely dangerous.
Now, gentlemen, go ahead.
I just think one additional point to what George is saying, that short of an open conflict, what Mr. Putin could do with this technical approach is bring up hypersonics up on the western portion of Russia, aimed at Europe, and that will absolutely intensify everything. Yeah. That's one additional arrow he has in the quiver.
As we say, it's a tinderbox there, right now.
Totally.
And gentlemen, real quickly, lastly, in recent days, we have actually not heard much from President Biden about this. Rather, we're hearing quite a bit from the UK and the German representatives to NATO. Who then is leading this bristling with Russia, George?
Well, I'm not sure President Biden knows what's going on. I don't mean to be mean, but he's probably wandering around the corridors of power in his pajamas as we speak. But whoever is running the American government is doing the pushing. They are, you're right, getting their faithful yapping dog in London to do a bit of it. But rather disturbingly, they appear to have succeeded in persuading the German government to take on a leading confrontational role against Russia. And given the history in the lifetime of people still watching this program between Germany and Russia, that's quite a sinister turn of events.
Mm-hmm. Final quick thoughts on that, Mike?
Yeah, I think George is absolutely right. You have, as he points out, little lapdogs who are nudging and thinking that the United States is going to be right there to back them up. I mean, it's like the big gunfighter, and you have someone nagging the opposite guy.
Yeah.
This could really turn into a chaotic mess for us early next year, as early next year.
Wow.
Now, right now, they're going to talk. Right now, they've agreed to talk, but anything can happen between now and then.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll leave that there. Thank you, gentlemen, both George Galloway, Mike Maloof.